back to the Claremont Classic Garage. We're out in the old Ram 2500. We got the 16-foot float attached to the back of it. And, oh, look at that place all fixed up. And, well, we're heading over to Peterborough because, like any day, today's a great day to buy a Ferguson. So, here it is. Ain't she pretty? Wow. It's like many of these old TEAs, it's been painted up at some point like a Massey 35. So it's got the slate gray underneath and red sheet metal. Here's one cool thing, it's got a Nodler seat on it. These were a popular accessory back in the day. You can see here the serial number, 6 digits, and it starts with 363. That puts it as 1953. And you can see here the extra little tag that appeared in 53, Massey, Harris, Ferguson. That's after the Ferguson merged with Massey Harris. And then, you know, soon they would drop the Harris and it would just become Massey Ferguson. Has a decent looking radiator in it. The gas tank, I can't even get the lid off. I don't think that hose is going to be holding any water. Holy moly. Man, how long has this thing been sitting? I don't even know if the engine is free. Who knows? Some stuff that I did see that I liked when I saw this, it's still got the toolbox. I need that for one of mine. It's got a set of Massey Ferguson running boards on it. They need a little beating and banging. It's got the bracket for the engine crank handle. Like I said, the Nodler seat. And it's got relatively decent rubber. These are 650 16s. It should actually have 419s on it, but somebody's put 16-inch wheels on it. And normally on these things, when you put 16-inch wheels, you put 616s, but these are 650. And that's what turned me on to this tractor, because my Oliver 550, the front tires on it are 650 16s, and they are really, really in bad shape. So I saw this ad on Marketplace. This fellow was advertising these tires, and I looked at those 650 16s, and I said, hey, they look pretty decent, because, I mean, in this day and age, I'm looking at somewhere between $300 and $400 for a pair of new tires that size, right? Anyway, I could see that they were attached to a Ferguson tractor, and I said, hey man, are you scrapping that tractor? He said, yeah, it's going for scrap. So that's what they'll do, because when guys get tractors, the scrapyard don't want the tires, right? Because they're a pain in the ass for them to deal with. So guys will try and sell the tires, and then they scrap the rest of the tractor. So anyway, we came up with a mutually benefiting deal. And I just bought the whole thing. So I'm going to go grab my channel locks now and see if I can get the lid off the gas tank and see how bad that stinks. This tractor is also one family owned since new. The guy's grandfather bought it. Passed it to his father, who passed it to him. Well, despite what the outside of the tank looks like, the inside is not really all that bad. Completely dry. It doesn't even smell. Okay, so let me grab a rag and we're going to start pulling dipsticks out and see what we see. Well, so there's decent looking stuff on the hydraulic dipstick. The engine dipstick, I kind of get the feeling that that's full of water. But anyway, it is what it is. We're still going to try and turn it over. I could try and turn it with the hand crank, I guess, if I get this bumper off. Too many years sitting with no air intake pipe on it. She seized tight. So all we can do, I'm going to pull all the plugs out, and we'll squirt some WD-40 or some magic stuff down there and let it soak for a while and see what happens. That's awesome. I took the plugs out of it. There isn't two of them the same. That's hilarious. I pulled the starter out hoping I could get at the ring gear with my pry bar here. You get a little bit better leverage that way, and I was hoping maybe I could get her to budge, but no, that's not happening. So here's our noodler seat. I've always wanted one of these. This version of it will fit 9 ends, 2 ends, and Ferguson's. So you can see how it works. This is how you adjust it. You lift that up and you slide this into the different notches, and that will set it at different heights. It's leaning a little bit forward now because you can see here all the bushings in it are wiped out. We're going to have to do a little bit of work to this to get it back in good shape, but that's a really cool thing to find. And I'm kind of wondering where I will get a new shock absorber for the inside of it. We'll have to see about that. Well, it's hard to see in there, but I left this thing sit full of WD-40 all night, and I come out this morning and we've got her turning just a bit. So I'm just going to kind of work it back and forth, and then you just keep going a little bit further every time, and next thing you know, you'll have it cleaned up. The rings, if you are nice and easy with it and the rings are okay, they will kind of scrape the rust off the board. So that's what we're trying to do. You just go back and forth, bit at a time until you get it free. I've got her turning around pretty well now. Now what we have to do, the shifter is all seized up. So what we have to do is take off these 2 nuts, pull out the shifter handle, and we can see if we can work the shift rails back and forth. With the shifter out, you can see the 3 shift dogs or rails or whatever you want to call them there. And what happens is the steel rails that they're on go in and out of bores in the end of the case. Well, you know what happens when we mix steel, aluminum, and moisture and take away the lubrication from the thing sitting for years and years. So all you got to do is you got to get in there with a bar and one by one bust them free, get them all set back to neutral, and it'll work fine again. I've got the shifter freed up where I can catch first and second. I can get over here and get start and reverse. Second and third, that gate is just not happening right now, but we can work on that as we go. Once I get it running, well, if I can get it running, and it gets warmed up a little bit and gets some oil sloshing around in there, this stuff will start working a little better. Now I will get the starter back on it and see if I can find a battery. Well, that's not good. All the insulation has rotted off the starter cable here, and it's touching the bracket. Oh boy, talk about a short. Oh, most of the battery tray is still there, so I got to see if I can find a battery. Alrighty, hopefully the tripod won't tip over. It doesn't usually like standing in grass, but success. It turns over nicely. I had to take the starter back out again and work it back and forth through the rusty spot with the pry bar, but I think we got her. Okay, now let's hook up the battery and see what happens. See if she'll turn over. It's easier to do it from the back. Oh, look at all the WD-40 coming out of it. And it's going faster and faster. Now we'll get it cleaned out. Okay, now just as a to start, we're going to do the initial compression test and see what we get. All right, here goes. We'll at least try number 1. I'm not expecting miracles, but the first compression test is, you can't always go by that because they're usually pretty grim. Well, there was something there, wasn't there? I don't think our battery's doing too good either. Huh, 90. That's not bad. That'll start an engine. Okay, I'm going to do the other 3. I'll be back when I'm done. So here we can see 1 and 2 are good. Number 3 has left the chat. And 4 is iffy. So what I want to do now, before I try and start it, it only takes a minute on these Fergusons, thankfully. I'm going to pull the gas tank off. We'll pull the valve cover off and make sure we don't have a stuck valve on number 3. And while we're doing that, we got to charge up our battery. And for the 5 minutes it takes, these things are always just so much easier to work on when you take the hood off. Okay, so here we can see all the valves opening and closing as they should. The number 3 exhaust valve looks kind of interesting with all that rust. That's pretty crazy. And a bunch of rust there. Weird, eh? And I don't see any signs of it pumping oil up here either. But if we manage to get it to run, hopefully then we'll see it starting to move some oil. Or, well, I call it oil. Whatever it is that's in the oil pan. Next thing we'll do is stick the camera down number 3 and see what we see. My guess at this point is that the rings are all stuck and it's just pretty much euchred. We'll find out when we look down there. Well, it's hard to see a camera on a camera, but it actually doesn't look too bad down in there. So I'm not sure why it's got no compression. One thing at a time. We'll see if we can get it running. Alright, what we're going to do now is put the ignition on. And see if we've got power to the... Well, our light works. Let's see, we'll jiggle this switch around a bit. There we are. Let's see if we got power here. Yeah, there you see we got power. And we've got resisted power to the coil. So that's good. What we'll do now is get our spark checker. Sorry, I got my sunglasses in my mouth. There we go. And we'll wind it over a little bit and see if we get any spark. So here's step 1. We're just going to check the secondary output of the coil and see if we've got any sparks there when we turn this thing over. Where are you? Start. Look at that. Oh, we had some and they're gone. It sparked a few times at first and then it stopped sparking. That's quite interesting. Let me fiddle around with it. Bad connection maybe. Okay, we'll get in here and have a look at the points. So you can see here the points are closed. We've got power on this side. We got no power on that side. We shouldn't even be seeing any power because all the voltage should be dropping across the primary of this coil. So, yeah, all right. So we got to clean the points. All right, we just used a little points file there and cleaned up our points. Now you'll see on the hot side of it, you don't get any reading on the power light because all the voltage is being dropped across the primary of the coil. Now what you'll see, I'm going to reach in here and when I open these, you'll see a spark. See that? Okay, so we got spark now. So now when I turn it over, we should see lots of sparkies there. Ignition is on. Lots of sparkies. Look at them all. Beautiful. Okay, now what we're going to do is put the coil wire back onto the cap and then see if, first we have to put the rotor in and then we'll clean this up and we'll make sure we've got sparkies getting to the plugs. Okay, now we'll see. Yep, there we go. Oh, we got one spark. There it is. It's sparking. Okay. So now we know that the rotor and the distributor cap are doing their job. So now I'm going to go ahead and put spark plugs back in and we'll maybe shoot some ether in the carburetor and see if she'll cough. Okay, let me wind it over and shoot a little joy juice in the carburetor and see what happens. If we get it to cough and fart, I'll take the carburetor apart, make sure it's okay. Well, she tried Okay, well that was promising, wasn't it? I'll give her one more shot of that, and then we'll see about having a look at the carburetor. Yeah, not even too much smoke. Not bad at all. I wonder if any oil came up. No, that's a little bit of wishful thinking yet. I don't think it's run enough. But we'll get there. Well, the carburetor's off. It's the correct 24T2 Zenith carburetor that should be on one of these things. Let's see what we find inside it. I got, oh dear. Look at that. I've never seen anything like that in my life. It's got a homemade wooden float in it, or a cork float. Isn't that hilarious? There's the needle and seat. These things originally had a brass float in them that was, well, problematic to say the least, and somebody has made their own out of cork. That's beautiful. And we can see here it's just packed. The jets are all plugged. It's all full of mud daubers have been in here. Yeah, this is going to need some work. Got the inside of this thing all cleaned up, blown out. Now I'm cutting a new gasket for it because I don't have one. Between tracing out the shape of the carburetor and what we've got left of the original gasket, we'll be able to cobble something up here. Oh, there we go. We got our gasket made, so we'll button it up, put it on, and see what happens. I'm curious to see how this float's going to work. We got the carburetor back on, and our temporary fuel system hooked up. I'm quite curious how that cork float is going to work. Is it actually going to shut the fuel off? We'll have to wait and see. But what we're up against right now, before I try and start this thing, I had a better look at the dipstick, and you could see right up to there, this thing is filled with water, the crankcase. That's not good. The oil pump probably won't even be able to pick that up, nor do I want it sloshing through the engine. So we're going to go ahead now, give it an oil change. I'm not going to put a filter in it or nothing. I just got to get that crap out of there and get something back in there. Already we got water dripping out. Oh yeah, look at that. I wonder if there's actually any oil. I better go get another drain pan. What do you think? What a mess. Well, the last drips of sludge come out of the oil pan. We'll pull the oil filter down and see what kind of grossness is in it. Well, you can see it's full of water too. I pulled out this old oil pressure gauge. It's definitely seen better days. It's got the old Stuart Warner style lighting. That's pretty cool. And we'll just throw this little guy in there for now. There we go. That'll do. At least we'll be able to read it. Good. Got the bottom all buttoned up. The filter's back on. And the drain plug is in. Now, I'm just going to grab a vacuum quickly and vacuum any of the loose crap out of this cylinder head that I can, and we'll go from there. Something interesting about the Ferguson tractor as compared to the Ford. The Ferguson actually had a positive crankcase ventilation system. So it could actually, in theory, handle a few drops of water getting in the crankcase, because eventually it would turn to mist or steam and get sucked out through here. You know, down and through the carburetor. Now this one, the actual little PCV valve that is built into this banjo bolt is long gone. They've replaced it with just a bolt. So this engine has actually, for all intent and purposes, been sealed. I guess this old boat gas cap, it's got a gas cap from a boat on here. You could maybe modify that into a breather, but doesn't matter. You can actually get that new from any place that sells Ferguson parts. Now, normally, in a situation like this, I would just dump a gallon of good used motor oil that came out of one of my vehicles in this. But wouldn't you know, just yesterday morning, I wasn't thinking, and I took it all to the hazardous waste, so I don't have any. Anyway, I found these two kind of mismatched half jugs of 5W30, which is not normally what I would use in these things. But hey, if the poor old wore out thing can make oil pressure with this stuff, it'll be all right when we get the 1540 in it. Anyway, so I'm going to pour it right in the head. That way it runs down all these push rod holes, and it'll get at the camshaft and everything. And hopefully kind of wet its whistle a little bit. Then we'll put some gas in it and see if the carburetor is going to work, because I'm still not sure about that float. I got gas in here, and it's not pouring out the carburetor, so I guess the float is working. Now I'll grab the battery, and I guess I'll set up the tripod, and we'll see if she'll crank up. Well, let's give her a shot. I stole the seat from this 9N here, so I got something to sit on. Okay. Some throttle. Come on. Uh-oh. Connection. Bad connection somewhere. Hang on. There she goes. Okay, we're going to try again. I found out a couple of things. Number one, even though I had good spark coming out of the coil, it was kind of weak at the plug. So we, I don't really know if it's an internally or externally resisted coil that's on this thing, but there was a ballast resistor in there, and I just got rid of it. A lot of times what would happen, car mechanics working on old tractors would not understand that they didn't need a ballast resistor, and they would always add one. And it kind of kills the output of the coil. I've seen it many times. Anyway, I also found that the piece of rubber hose that I used to connect my temporary fuel supply to the carburetor was plugged with a mud dauber. Can you believe it? It was just something I had laying around on my bench. So I blew it out. I'm pretty sure we got gas going into the carburetor now. We're going to try again to start this thing. Now we gotta hope that oil starts coming up. That's pretty good, eh? Now that we've had it running and it's got oil to itself, we'll give it another compression test and see what we get. Okay, let's give her a compression test. We got all the plugs out, the throttle's wide open. We're going to do number one first. Oh, we're okay. We got 80, 100, 100, and 105. I got her filled up with water. You can see the water pump is leaking profusely, but you never know. Sometimes those things fix themselves once you get them going. We'll see what happens. And there's a little leak in the bottom of the rad core here, but I'm not too concerned about that. At least I can run it now without fear of it, you know, overheating, right? So we'll crank it up again, and I'm still looking for oil pressure. Yeah, the water pump is leaking. Oh, I love old tractors. It turned out that our oil pressure pipe somewhere in here it's plugged with rust or something. That's why we were getting no oil pressure on the gauge. So I cobbled up a fitting and screwed this one right into the oil gallery. So we'll start it back up and see what we got. 40, not bad. Goes down to 30 at idle, that's pretty good. And shiver me timbers, I have no idea what that alternator on this thing is, but it works. Oh, PTO's turning, you think the hitch works? Of course it works. Unbelievable. Well, we still got gas. Let's see if she'll move. I can get second gear. And away we go. You can't make this stuff up, folks. Them little rockers doing their thing. This thing's nice, it steers nice. Unbelievable. I mean, it doesn't just run, it runs good. So now we've been driving it around a bit and she's starting to warm up. Check our oil pressure. We still got 20 at idle. That's pretty darn good. Okay, I got the valve cover back on now, so I'm not getting splattered with oil while it's running. And let's make sure we haven't messed anything up. When you're this good, they call you Claremont. The transmission's still a little... Oh, there we go, first gear. There's second. Let's try it for reverse. What do you know? We got reverse. The only gate that's not working right now is 3 and 4. It's still stuck. But for now we can move it around. Well, that'll do it for this one. I think this one kind of ran a little bit long, but it's pretty entertaining. So, you know, I hope you were glued to your seat for the whole thing. Anyway, I'm very happy. We've saved another one from the scrapper. We'll figure out what to do with it later. You know, even though it runs and drives, this thing needs a ton of work to be like a viable tractor. So I have to take stock of what I've got around here, and it may end up getting blown up for parts. But at least we know we've got a good engine, because I have one that's got a big problem with the cylinder head, and it's a really nice tractor aside from that. Anyway, I'm going to go now. I'd like to thank you for tuning into our little channel here. I hope you'll come back and see us again. And until then, I'm Kevin, saying so long from the Claremont Classic Garage.